I started on medication in August, and that was sort of a big game changer because all my life I've been one way, and I take this medication, and I mean, after a week of adjusting to it, all of a sudden I realized like, I just sat down and like wrote 5 pages without doing 7 other things. And I feel like I could write more. And I was focusing on work suddenly for like 6 hours a day solid. And so that was a big game changer, was medication, but also the coaching group.
ADHD Rewired, episode 326. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Marissa Marangoni. Marissa is a mom, a writer, and a former teacher. She runs Marangoni Write and Design, where she works as an instructional designer and technical writer. Marissa writes creatively and podcasts when she's not working or answering to, "Mom, watch this." She loves lists, popcorn, baking, animals, sweating, and deep human connection. Have you thought about the order of that one, like the sweating and deep human connection?
Yeah, I probably should think about reorganizing that
Well,
list.
I guess it depends on who you're with. So
True.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
All right. So let's start with you're recently diagnosed less than a year ago.
Yeah, I was diagnosed in August.
What? Tell us a little bit about kind of what brought you to get diagnosed.
Well, it was one of those, I knew something was off like all of my life. I kind of described it a lot of the time to people as, I feel like the stupidest person in the room, but I know I'm not. But all these things that go on in my brain, I know they're not normal. And I just chalked it up to as just being weird. But it just became more and more apparent the older I got, the more school I went to, that something was not quite right. I struggled with a lot of different things. And my response to that was always just to work harder. So I worked really, really hard for a really long time. And after I had my son in 2016, things just got even harder. And so I started just trying to do some research and reading about different things. And one day I kind of stumbled over, what did I run into? I read a book, which led me to YouTube a few things. And there I ran into Jessica McCabe. And from there I thought, I think I have ADHD, which I never would have suspected, mostly because I just didn't know really what it was and what it actually involved. And from there I sought the diagnosis. And
when you were watching the videos and reading stuff, were there certain things that you're like, like were there certain things that you remember specifically really relating to?
Some of it I remember thinking, oh my gosh, other people do that. I thought it was just me, like struggling to adult or taking 3 hours to do dishes, or trying to clean, okay, I'm going to clean the house today. And it takes me, all of a sudden it's halfway through the day and I've done half of 6 different things, but nothing's actually done. And so now all of a sudden this has turned into like a multi-day project because there's so many things that I've started and need to finish. But some of it was learning related, I think, just not a lot of weird things. Well, things that I thought were just weird about me, but in reality are actually my brain.
So you had said that part of the challenges that you've also experienced has to do with like comprehension, both with the reading and processing language in like social scenarios.
Yeah, and that's kind of been a more recent realization, and the more I think about it, the more I realize, like, wow, yeah, that's really been a problem. Even
what's it like? Just try to describe it.
I guess with reading, I can read. My biggest aha moment, I think, I really have a problem with reading was when I started college. My first reading assignment, I went to a private school that was really known for being academically rigorous, and it was exactly what I wanted, and I did really well. But the first year was so hard for me. And because I started to realize I coasted through K through 12, just memorizing things. And that was how I got it. I didn't understand things, and I didn't remember any of American history or understand science concepts, but I could remember just about anything for as many hours as necessary until I took a test, and then I was done. But in college, my very first assignment was a literary journal article about passenger pigeons. And I just remember knowing that the reading was at a higher level. So I knew that going into it, but I'm reading it and I just read it over and over and over again. Was like, I don't understand what this is saying. And I don't know why I don't understand what this is saying. And it happened before. And I remember telling my mom as a kid, like, I just read this sentence like 45 times and I still don't know what I'm reading. I think it's because it's boring. And that's what I went with for such a long time.
Was it that you were having other thoughts while reading, or was it just like not sinking in what you were reading?
I think it's a combination of both. A lot of the time, if I'm not 100% really interested in what I'm reading, then it's going to be kind of difficult for me to understand sometimes. And depending on, how challenging the read is, if it's challenging, it may just be that I am just not getting it.
What about for things that you are interested in?
Even sometimes getting in, I think it's a part of it I have to be pulled into something really quickly. And if I am not, it's very difficult for me to continue.
Now, it's interesting, too, because you're a writer.
Yeah. So I went to school for a lot of years. I have a master's degree in writing. So there was a lot of reading. And when I look back at it, I think I don't know how I did that. I feel like I might not have been able to do it now. But I just kind of pushed through, and it was, that was all like literary, heavy, hard reads. And I remember some of my tactics were I noticed a lot of patterns. So one class I had to read all of Jane Eyre's work. And hopefully this professor isn't listening, but I figured out very quickly that the way she tested us on it was over dialogue. And so I just read the dialogue in the books. And I also, to get through all those books, because it was a very fast 5-week summer course, it was 5 days a week, where we had to read all her novels. And I don't particularly like Jane Eyre to begin with, so that was fun. But I listened to it. So I found the audiobooks and would listen when I was driving on the way to school and on the way back home. And then I would just read the dialogue in between.
Did you find that actually helped with comprehension though? Like, were you able to get, because, it's one of the things that I learned in grad school, when I realized at the very, very end of grad school that you're really not actually expected to read everything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait, I didn't get that memo. Because I was like trying to read everything. And it was like, so I was getting like 2 hours of sleep like every day during grad school. And it was, so one of the things that it taught me was, I guess you can call it speed reading, but it was more of like skimming, but then knowing where to really like focus. And so I sort of learned, it's like you read the headlines, the bold print, the first and last sentence of each paragraph, and stuff in between is just typically fluff.
Yeah, that technique kind of helped mostly during undergraduate which they prepped us to go to graduate school. So by the time I got to graduate school, I was pretty good with research articles and literary criticism, that sort of stuff. But when it came to reading actual literature, that didn't always fly. So I relied a lot on participating in class. So I would just go off of what everybody else was saying.
I was always so grateful when a teacher gave participation points. I'm like, yep, I am showing up for that.
Yeah. I mean, I read as much as I could manage, but a lot of it, if I wasn't fully interested in a story, it would be hard for me to remember what happened. And because we were reading really complex text, it was a challenge just all the way around. So a lot of it, like, I gained through the actual discussions in class and Cliff Notes.
I freaking love Cliff Notes.
My mom introduced me to them when I was probably in elementary school. She said, "Did you know about these? See, now you don't even have to read the whole book." I was like, you are so smart.
I remember too thinking that, because, obviously the teachers were like looked down upon Cliff Notes, and I don't think I could have made it through any of my English classes without Cliff Notes. Cause it helped me like see the gist, and see the themes. And then I would actually read the stuff. And then only because I read the Cliff Notes did I was able to actually see, oh, okay. So these are the main ideas. Like I wouldn't have got that. And like Shakespeare, oh God, like thank God for those side by side, like the like everyday English and then the Shakespeare English.
Oh my gosh. I was so thankful when they let us do that. But later on, like I taught Shakespeare. When I read, I was like, oh, I have to teach Macbeth. Good.
So reading and Shakespeare and Cliff Notes and, all the sort of the hurdles we had to sort of get through to get through school. So I was diagnosed when I was 19. You were not diagnosed until after you got your master's degree. Yeah,
I was 35.
How the hell did you do that?
34.
How did you make it through grad school without getting diagnosed?
I don't. I mean, when I look back at school, I just remember feeling really not smart, but I had a reputation for being very intelligent. And so I always felt like, man, I'm just faking this. Oh, I'm such a good faker because I really don't know what's going on half the time.
Let me ask you this: to do as well as you did, how much was your social life sacrificed?
It was big sacrifices. So in high school, I graduated, I think, 4th in my class. Wow. And I
like there were only 5 people in my school. I went to a very small school.
No, I mean, it was small. I had like 120 in our grade, but I remember very clearly basically shutting myself in my bedroom for all weekend long, 24 hours at a time, and just memorizing my notes page after page. So I do sort of have a photographic memory. I don't necessarily think because it came naturally, but because I worked so hard to memorize everything, I could remember like, oh, right, that was on this page on this side.
I can kind of do that, especially if there is like distinguishable like markings or like a box of something, like, I mean, I don't know why they ever took pictures out of books, because pictures are great.
Pictures are helpful, but so I relied on, it was just memorization all the way K through 12th grade. And so when I did get to college, and when their kind of method was to break down the way you learn and the way you respond and teach you to criticize and think about and consider everything. And it was very, very hard because until then I was so used to being able to memorize everything and go, suddenly I couldn't do that anymore because everything was written tests and it was not like cut and dry answer on anything, which I love generally speaking, but I just, started realizing I gotta figure something out. So I started understanding that I learn better if I listen And I had to hold back so hard on taking notes because my method was to write everything down that everybody said. And then I would miss comprehending what was going on. But it had worked for such a long time. So that was a big shift, kind of realizing that I got a lot out of discussion and I got a lot out of hearing and whatever.
So were you working as a writer? After college?
After college, I went straight for my master's.
Okay.
My first master's.
Your first master's?
Yes. So I had an MFA in fiction writing, and I taught, I adjuncted for probably 6 months or so. And I had been teaching as a part of my assistantship for graduate school. And so I came to realize I kind of like this. I think maybe I'll try and go from there. So a master's of fine arts is supposed to be considered a terminal degree and looked at as a PhD. It's not necessarily the case anymore. And it was kind of sort of then, I don't know. So I did a lot of applying.
And just for people, terminal. The first time I heard that term terminal degree, I'm like, that sounds so awful, right?
Well, it just meant it was supposed to be the highest level of learning you could achieve in writing.
Right, unless you're going into academics, research.
Right. And so I did try and I applied for a lot of professor jobs. It didn't happen. So I was teaching part-time. I said, you know what? I like younger kids too. So I'll just go back to school again. So I finished my master's in education in English language arts for 7th through 12th graders, and then worked as a high school teacher for a year. After that, then I became a writer. I mean, I was always writing, and that was always my end goal dream, is to write for a living. But I loved the teaching, and it didn't seem to be, I couldn't figure out a way to do the writing I wanted to do.
What kind of writing did you like to do?
Really, overall, it's creative writing. That would be my dream, but that's not necessarily realistic for most people. And it isn't. About
short stories.
Yeah, short stories,
poetry,
novels. It's unless you are extremely successful, it just doesn't pay the bills. Yeah. So you have to figure something out. So teaching is a pretty common way to do that, though not necessarily high school teaching. But I ended up being what's called a content developer for a manufacturing education company.
Okay.
And I basically authored online education courses for manufacturers. And
are you still doing that?
Yes, but on my own now. So I left that after my son was born. And
so you're working for yourself now?
Yes. And
I bet that is teaching a whole bunch more about your ADHD and how you learn.
It is. So more about that reading comprehension, because I just had a project. Just had one with instructions. I had to read instructions, and I thought, okay, I'm going to read these instructions.
Instructions like a
paragraph. It was a paragraph long, and I kept reading it and reading it. It was like, I don't think I understand what I'm supposed to do. And then, so I made some mistakes, but I apologized, and hopefully that doesn't deter future work.
I mean, instructions are the worst.
I hate them.
It's, whether it's putting together a recipe or building furniture, or the worst is filling out financial forms. That's the worst kind of instructions. I'm just it could be wait, my name goes here. Wait, here at this spot. Wait, wait. Does my first name go here?
Right. So, I'll put my first name. It's supposed to be my last.
It's amazing how often I get forms sent back to me because I screwed them up, even though I've triple checked them because I know I screw up forms, and and I usually will also have somebody else look at the form. It's Forms. All right. On that fun note, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to dive in a little bit more to some of your self-discoveries as you're working for yourself and kind of just the things you're learning about you. So
sounds good.
We will be right back. I don't know about you, but I have always found one of the worst feelings is that feeling of not being understood in regards to your ADHD. It can be so hard to push forward when there are so many barriers in the way, like being misunderstood, finding time management and planning difficult, and stress just from all the things going on in the world right now. What you can count on is that here you can feel understood. Whether you are new to the podcast or you've been listening for a while, welcome to ADHD reWired. We have coaching groups, an alumni community, and a Facebook community, and of course, our podcast. We want to welcome you to all of it. Last week, we just had our final registration event for our summer coaching and accountability groups. And as of this recording, which is on Friday, June 12th, we have 2 spots left. If you want to know more, go to coachingrewired.com to see if we have any spots left or to find out how you can join our wait list. If you are seriously interested in snagging one of the last 2 spots, pending that they are still available, so check the website, or you want to get on the wait list, scroll to the bottom of that page at coachingrewired.com and send us a message to let us know that you are interested. And to everybody who signed up for this summer's session, we look forward to seeing you July 10th. To learn more, go to coachingrewired.com. This podcast is brought to you by our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. What is Patreon? Think of it as kind of like public radio where you can listen as long as you want to get all the value from it. It's not going to go away if you don't contribute to it, but you will find value, even more value from it by contributing. And although we're not going to send you a tote bag, there are perks like access to webinars that I've posted on there. At the $25 a month level, you can join us for our monthly coaching call, which is a huge perk. I want to welcome our 3 new patrons this week. At the $5 a month level, we have C. At $10, Wayne P. and Tara L. is our newest member at the $25 a month level. I want to thank each of you so much. If you can, consider becoming a patron at any amount you can. If you can, consider becoming a patron at the $25 a month level, especially if you would like to join me in a small group of other patrons for an hour of coaching. Just go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. I really do appreciate everyone's support. If you are able to support this podcast financially, I sincerely thank you. And for those of you who are able to give the $25 a month level and are going to be joining us for our next group coaching call, it's on Tuesday, June 23rd at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. At $25 a month or more, you can join us. Our group coaching calls are every 4th Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. And if you can't support this podcast financially, another way you can support us is to leave a review on your favorite podcast player or talk about ADHD rewired in your favorite ADHD groups online. All of your support is appreciated. You know, this podcast comes to you free, but it is not free to produce. So we do really appreciate your support. To become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Patreon is Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. All right. We are back with Marissa Marangoni.
Yes.
I did good, right?
You did. Good job.
I was giving Marissa this look. I was like, did I do it right? Did I do it right? The amount of practice I had to do with her last name before we hit record. And this is a very normal thing that I do on this podcast before I hit record. Yeah. So we were talking about self-discovery, working for yourself. You also shared with me, recently too that, you also have some challenges or maybe difficulties around like sensory processing. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that. She says, all right.
I think it's just one of those things I just have kind of, for the most part, when I realized that it was not normal, I just kind of deal, which now I'm starting to think, I wonder if I should have done something else than just deal with this. So one of my lifelong issues has been sleep. I can remember being very little and not being able to sleep. And I never really knew why. But my mind does not stop. And when I lay down to sleep, it is probably way worse than it is just generally because I have nothing that I have to be thinking about. So I will pick everything.
It's usually the time when the internal to-do list likes to remind you of all the things you forgot during the day.
Yes. Planning ahead, just everything. I will think about everything. So I spent a lot of my childhood not trying to sleep, not being able to fall asleep. There were years where I didn't sleep much at all as a teenager, just because some of that is anxiety induced too. So if I'm really anxious, then I have even harder of a time. And I mean, at this point in my life, I'm better than I've ever been. However, I have a lot of specific requirements to sleep, which are not as bad as they used to be, but it's certain things like it needs to be quiet, but it can't be too quiet. So I cannot have noises have to be even if there are going to be noises. So okay. I can't deal with people snoring. I can't deal with a fan that clicks but not at the same point, if that makes sense.
Yep. I used to have a white noise machine generator that was it was like a speaker. It wasn't like an actual white, and you could hear that just little sort of click between the loop. And I was like, nope, that is not going to do. So I can relate to that.
Yeah. Well, people will say, I remember people telling me, trying to sleep with music on. Well, I can't do that because as soon as the song changes, I will wake up.
Yep.
I can't deal with the change in volume or sound. So I generally sleep with white noise, like you said. That's very even, the same kind of sound all night long.
What kind do you use? What do you use?
It's just this little plug-in thing. It's nothing special, but I also have an app that I will use for some variety occasionally.
Okay. Do you? I use one of the those, and I think there's different companies that make them, but they're the white noise machines that you see at therapist's office, where it's literally a whooshing air. It's actually a fan or something that's inside of there that's making the noise.
That one I had one of those for a while, but then, I took it to Europe with me.
Those don't travel very well.
I fried it. Yeah.
Oh, you didn't get the,
No, I didn't think about that. So. Oops. Yeah, that died. But I have a different one that has a bunch of different settings on it now. So it's not the fan in there, which I do prefer the fan sound because the electronic sound is very different. But I've come to accept the one I have. It works fine. It works fine now.
So sound's got to be just right.
Sounds. I mean, if there's smell off in the house, if a skunk sprays outside, I'll wake up. Or if we cooked something earlier in the day, it makes it difficult because all I can think about is that I'm smelling the smell that's not supposed to be there. We have old dogs, so when they snore or move around, it can be as small as someone moving. So I am not a good person to share a bed with. I'm just not.
Do you share a bed with your husband?
It depends. I would like to transition back down there, but if it kind of goes in cycles. So if I'm having a lot of anxiety or I'm depressed, it makes it much more difficult for me to sleep. So then I'm more sensitive to noises or anything. And so then we split up. And so I'm currently sleeping in a separate bedroom, but I think I'm ready to go back again. It'll go for a month at a time and then I'll go back.
And what else? So, didn't you tell me that like you once picked up your husband and he had like had fast food that day or something? And like you can tell like immediately.
Yeah, I'm very sensitive to smell. And I think it's just, I have a pretty strong sense of smell. So I can tell like if somebody's eating fast food, I will probably be able to tell you that because they smell like it. Then it used to be I think I told you I wouldn't eat food in my car, specifically fast food, because I felt like there was such strong scent to it that it would just get stuck in the car, and then I would smell like it too. Yeah, little things like that. I mean, I guess to me they're bigger things, but I think to most people they're not.
What about like sort of tactile, like stuff touching your skin, clothing?
Yeah. Oh man, you know that like fleece blankets and stuff. I cannot stand those. I don't know what it is, but they feel so bad to me.
Describe it.
Just like, it feels gross. I don't know. It feels like my skin, if there's any dry part of my skin a little bit, it sticks to it and I can't stand that.
What about like tags and stuff like that? Does that bother you?
Tags aren't so bad. I mean, I'll cut some out here and there, but they've never been a real big thing for me. But like blankets for me, I would prefer cotton. Very specifically, I don't like anything else pretty much for bedding. Yeah.
Are you restrictive on types of clothing you can wear? No,
I've never been that way, but I don't like wearing dresses or skirts because I don't know. I like to feel secured into my clothes, and those are
that makes sense. Actually, makes sense. No, that does
okay.
that does make sense.
So I do love like a weighted blanket.
I was just going to ask you, deep pressure. Do you like deep pressure, like a really big squeeze? Like, do you like that?
Yeah.
Do you ever get massage?
Yes. It's been a while now.
It's been a while for a lot of us.
I know, but yes, I do like that a lot.
What about food? I said the smell. What about like taste and like the textures of food?
I'm not a picky eater, but I think texture is one of those weird things for me. I think I was a picky eater when I was a kid. From what I remember, I had kind of a limited palate. I will eat pretty much anything now, but it has to be like mind. Maybe it's matter over mind in this situation. I don't know. So for instance, if I eat, I love seafood. I love shrimp. But if I eat like, I don't know, more than 12 or something, I start thinking about how they feel, and then I can't do it anymore.
Wait, how the shrimp feel? Like their feelings or how they feel?
No, the texture.
Oh, the poor shrimp.
No. I mean, I could get wrapped up in that very easily, but shut that one off. But yeah, it's the texture of shrimp, or like eggs can gross me out after I eat too much eggs. Same thing with a banana.
Okay.
And it's always been like that. So those foods when I was younger, or as a kid, I wouldn't touch. I just really didn't like them.
Now, are there any senses that are not as kind of honed in?
No, I'm looking. No. I wrote down all the senses on a list, so I would make sure I talked about them. No, I don't think so. I think they're all pretty intense.
Intense. What for me, I have. You've already experienced my auditory issues. And so I have that. I definitely can relate to a lot of the sort of tactile things. Like there's certain. Like just pieces of clothing, I'm like, nope, today this is not going to, no. Like when you said it feels gross, I totally can relate. Like, it's like, get this thing off of me. And it's not even just thinking about that thing can give me that sort of like, oh, no. And I've wondered, because I also have a very strong sense of smell. But my vision has always been really bad. Like I have
mine too.
I've always, like, even with like contact lenses in, like I still have very bad vision. And so I've always like wondered, like, is like, if I didn't have contacts and I didn't have my glasses, like I couldn't survive. I mean, I mean, maybe I could, but like, it's that bad, like where I can't, it's so bad that I can't even see like far enough to see like text in a book to have it all. Like I have to look with one eye, because if I see it this close and then it's like crossed, like the vision becomes like double visioned. And like, I mean, I remember from the time I was in like kindergarten up until my like way into adulthood, every year when I went to be a doctor, it's worse again. Vision's worse again. Yeah. So
only recently, I think I haven't gotten a stronger prescription, but I've had eye issues are a big part of my existence. And I've actually had that same thought. I'm like, I wonder if my other senses are so strong because my eyes are off. And it really, like you, like I can't see a lot without glasses or contacts, but I can walk through a dark house in the dark with no glasses or contacts and manage. Not because of my eyes, though.
Because you're like feeling your way around.
Yeah, I do pretty well. But I went through a lot of eye issues. Lifelong glasses wearer.
Yeah, and I also need very bright light to be able to like. It almost like if an area is too dark, it like my brain starts to shut down. I also used to look at the sun when I was a kid. I would recommend it. But there was something though on a nice summer day. I'll look up, I'll have my eyes closed, and you feel like you can see like the red, like from just your blood.
Oh man, I used to do that.
And I just like, there's still to this day, I'm like, oh, I want to open my eyes. I know I shouldn't do it. I know I should and there's just something about that sensation that just feels so good to me. I am certain that has affected my ability to like see in like a dimly lit environment.
It probably has something to do with that, I would think. Like I can't not squint. If I go outside, I can't not. It doesn't matter how dreary it is out, and we're in Ohio, so it's often not sunny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am pretty sensitive to light. I definitely that as an issue. Yeah, I had a lot of eye surgery as a kid, so I have what's called No, it's not. Now I'm forgetting what it's called. Good. Anyway,
it's called
my eyes crossed.
Sounds like.
Yeah, sounds like my eyes cross involuntarily, and so my eye muscles are weak, and I've had surgery to correct that multiple times.
Did you have to wear like a patch over a particular eye?
They tried all kinds of stuff. So I did drops. I had a patch. I had bifocals when I was in first grade. And that was before they blend them. And so other kids would always tell me, your glasses are broken because they looked cracked. It was really fun. Yeah. I went and did all that stuff.
Oh man.
Surgery's been the only thing that's helped. And so I haven't had one in the last few years. So that's good. Good.
It is sort of curious, like what these sort of the neurological sort of impact sort of in sort of both directions.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's take another quick break. When we come back, I want to hear about, Holey Happy, your, the sure. podcast that you're doing with any of your friends. So, we will be right back. This week on Hacking Your ADHD, moving from defense to offense. Hey, if you're looking for something productive to do for a 15-minute break where you can actually learn about your ADHD, then check out Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb this week and every Monday. This week, his episode is titled Moving from Defense to Offense. Go check out what this week's episode is all about. Join Will as he explores ways that you can work with your ADHD brain to do more of the things that you want to do. Subscribe to these short, mindful ways to hack your ADHD. Go to hackingYourADHD.com for show notes and to subscribe. And every Friday, check out ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan. At ADHD Essentials, they help families develop the skills and knowledge needed to better manage ADHD. Go to ADHDessentials.com to learn more. Both Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials are both part of the ADHD reWired podcast network, available to everyone, everywhere you consume podcasts. You can join me and the host of Hacking Your ADHD, Will Curb, and the host of ADHD Essentials, Brendan Mahan, for an hour of live Q&A on July 14th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Go to ADHDrewired.com/events to register for this and upcoming live Q&As. Join us every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern for an hour of live Q&A. Register for free at ADHDrewired.com/events. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. Our next one is on July 14th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Put it in your calendar. We'll see you there. All right, we are back with Marissa Marangoni. I feel like you just rolled off the tongue that time.
Yeah, you got it.
I was like, there's this little fear there. I'm like, you're going to tell me I said it wrong. All right. So Holey Happy. It's a podcast that you and your friend, are doing. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we started that, I think, last spring. So it was actually before I was even officially diagnosed with ADHD, but we just talk a lot and we grew up together, and I thought, I told her, let's work on something together. I feel like we should. We used to do creative stuff together all the time as kids. And so it's just been a really long time since we've put our heads together. So we stumbled on podcasting and thought, well, let's see how that is. And we focus on the holes that mental health issues can make in your happiness, but kind of how we've worked through them. So we've both kind of suffered through anxiety and depression at various points. We both also have ADHD. And so
you started this before you knew you had ADHD.
Yeah, I think at that point I was pretty sure not, but I thought, I don't know, maybe not, but yeah.
So, have you been doing it kind of like on and off?
That's kind of how it started, but we just started doing it once a month. So we're on a more regular schedule now.
And your friend who you said also has ADHD, was she recently diagnosed, or was she known for a while?
I think she was diagnosed when we were in like 3rd or 4th grade. So it's been a long, long time. So
over the last year, since it's about, so you've been diagnosed for under a year, about a year, half, 3/4 of a year, if I'm mathing correctly. What have been some of the things that you have found to be most helpful in managing your ADHD?
I started on medication in August, and that was sort of a big game changer because all my life I've been one way, and I take this medication, and I mean, after a week of adjusting to it, all of a sudden I realized I just sat down and wrote 5 pages without doing 7 other things. And I feel like I could write more. And I was focusing on work suddenly for 6 hours a day solid. And so that was a big, big game changer, was medication, but also the coaching group.
Before you talk about that, how is it emotionally for you? That you were now able to really sit down and focus and do work. And how was that for you?
It was a little frustrating, I think, because I thought I So I didn't have to work that hard all that time. Like I could have maybe not been working so hard and spent more time with my friends. And so it felt a little frustrating, but I feel like I went through everything I did so I could get to where I am, I guess.
It's a good perspective.
I'm not angry about it. Just was a little sad at first. Like, oh man, only I would have done something sooner.
I very much feel that, and a lot of people, and I always feel bad too when I hear people that don't have that experience with medication. But yeah, that feeling of, man, like that's why school was so hard. That's why things were so hard up to this point. Like this could have been so much easier. In comparison, not saying that it was ever easy, but easier and, so medication and, can I ask, what do you take?
I'm on Wellbutrin to sort of manage my, anxiety and depression a little bit too.
Okay.
I was sort of like a 3-for-1 deal. The doctor was
hoping. Is that what you started on?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting because it's, because I often think of Wellbutrin as an ADHD medication. Although it's often considered that like if you have depression, with ADHD, that's often kind of the go-to, because it also works on the norepinephrine and, which can also be helpful.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice. The psychologist who diagnosed me suggested to my primary care that she put me on Adderall, I think. But she and I talked, and she knows my medical history better than he does. And she just said, I'm just concerned that it's going to make your anxiety worse. So she's like, I don't have anything against it, but let's try this first and see. And I think she was right on, because this even shot my anxiety through the roof for like a week. It was miserable, but then it just sort of tapered off and I adjusted to it.
Can I ask what your dosage is?
It's just 150 milligrams, so it's pretty low.
That's what I take too. Have you ever had any issues with generics?
I don't know. I don't think so, because I'm on the actual generic for that.
Just something that I personally have experienced, and I do think it's, and I share this for listeners just to like observe. I'm not saying that this is what your issue is, but just to try to observe. When I can pretty much do any generic, but when they switch manufacturers on me, that first week of the switch, it's no bueno. It is not good. Yeah. So I've, to sort of resolve that, because I kept trying to get the same manufacturer. Then I'd go to the pharmacy and they're like, oh, you switch manufacturers again. I'm like, what the fuck? So I use Costco now. So at least I can get 3 months at a time, and without having to worry about, them changing manufacturers.
Yeah. I haven't even thought about that, but that's an interesting thing.
Because I think sometimes what happens with the generics is that we're struggling and we're like, what's wrong with me? And it's like, oh no, like medication's changed. Like, and because of the way the generics work, like I do not believe that generics are the same as name brand.
They probably aren't. But yeah,
the thing is it only has to be like 80% as like effective.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Like, I'm like,
okay.
80% is not the same.
That's a significant difference.
Right. And when you're dealing with stuff that has to do with like the brain, right? Like that just pisses me off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been, I will say lately, it's been difficult because really since December, I've kind of been struggling, but I was going through so much emotional upheaval since December that I was like, I feel like it's situational and it's not the medication. And then once I was about to stop, like get into a calmer part of life again, then all of this happened.
COVID-19.
Like, I give up. Yep. I don't even know what's happening anymore.
Waving the white flag. Yeah. Oh, that's rough.
I feel like I finally sort of settled down a bit in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. So you started taking medication that helped, and then you joined one of our coaching groups.
Yes.
How was that for you?
that was really helpful because I guess all my life, even when I would talk about some of the struggles I would face, nobody would ever say like, oh yeah, me too. Or they'd say, oh yeah, everybody, that happens to everybody. And so I'd be like, oh, right. Okay.
Well, everybody procrastinates sometimes. You know.
Right. You have no idea. But yeah, it was so helpful to be with a group of people who knew exactly what I was talking about when I'd be like, no, it really took me 3 days to do laundry. It really did. Or it takes me 6 hours to motivate myself to go outside and clean the sidewalk. I don't know.
Are you supposed to clean the sidewalk?
I don't know. I was just making up a bad example.
I didn't get that memo. So what were some of the takeaways, other than, sort of knowing, like, really experiencing that feeling of not being alone?
Yeah. I mean, that was a big one because I guess I've always felt pretty alone for as long as I can remember. I just have always been like, I just never quite fit in anywhere. So yeah, that was a big thing. But I mean, other things, it helped me. I think overall, the biggest thing I took from it was to be nicer to myself. And I'm able to step, like, I definitely have emotional dysregulation. And now I can't remember the official term for that with ADHD. What was it called?
The emotional dysregulation. There's the rejection sensitivity.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah. I don't like that.
Which is it's still kind of a controversial term because it's not in the DSM. I have mixed thoughts about it. On one side, I think, there is a large sort of, just the number of people who I hear who feel so validated by that label. Like that's meaningful, you know?
Yeah.
I think that we just need more sort of research to validate it, to make sure that it is in fact its own separate thing and not like something that's coexisting with ADHD that may actually be like another already established disorder. Cause I suspect that there are many people who, sort of identify with that rejection sensitivity dysphoria, who may actually have borderline personality disorder, because one of the main triggers of borderline personality is perceived rejection. Right. So it's like, okay, so that's, if that's sort of the main area, how do you distinguish like what is that and what is the other thing? It's interesting. It's the same issues that I have with, people like, Daniel Amen, who have the 7 types of ADHD. It's like, well, that may be actually talking about something else that you're calling a part of the ADHD. And so it's like, language matters. I think that language is helpful for validation of how we're feeling. And so I think that's important. But from a sort of a scientific standpoint, we got to be talking about the same thing because it affects how we approach treatment around this.
Yeah. Makes
so
sense.
That's my, I'm going to step off my soapbox now.
You're good. Makes sense to me. It was nice to just have kind of some words to put with those emotional things. And I, for so long, was like, I am just really emotionally balanced, but I am really just not. I'm pretty intense. And so one of the things the group really helped me with was for the first time in my entire life, I found myself like one day while we were still in the group, really anxious, just out of nowhere. And instead of just feeling it, I was able to lay in bed and I was like, I'm really anxious right now. And just kind of sat with it. Like, I'm anxious. Why is this happening? Okay. And then it passed. And that was the first thing. I think that's the first time that's ever happened. And so I've been able to more and more be like, okay, I feel this way, but that doesn't actually mean that all these conclusions I'm drawing from this feeling are accurate. Because most of the time they're not.
Yeah. I was actually talking I'm in a mastermind group, and this morning we were talking about just how convincing of a liar our emotions can be to what's actually going on.
Yeah.
Right.
And I believe them for a very long time. So it's still like a work in progress to get out of there. But even with that project I was talking about, I kind of messed up for work earlier. I was able to say out loud, like, I feel really stupid right now because I made this mistake, but I also know like that's not the truth. And I was like, here, I feel really dumb. Now they're never going to want to work with me again. And this is what they're probably thinking. Those are just the things I'm making up that I don't know anything about. So just step back a little bit.
Do you still talk with anyone from your accountability team?
Occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's interesting, because I know that there are lots of people who have, regular meetings still, sometimes even years after. And I talk to people too. They're like, yeah, we meet we were meeting weekly. Then it became like once a month, but we still check in every once in a while. But it's nice to know that people are still sort of engaging no matter what frequency it's at, to know that. And it's always nice too that, especially with our folk, you can reach out a year later and people will be happy to hear from you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is nice.
Marissa, is there anything else that you want to share?
Not that I can think of.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
And where can people hear about your podcast, and if they are interested in hiring a instructional designer, technical writer, where would they find that information?
Well, if you're interested in hiring me, I'm at Marangoni Write and Design.com. And you probably have to put that in the notes so they know how to spell it.
Yes.
And Holey Happy, we can be found on Stitcher and iTunes and Anchor. And it's spelled Holey with an E in it. So Holey.
Which is why I couldn't find it when you first.
Yes. But we're also at holeyhappy.com.
Awesome. Well, Marissa Marangoni, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and keep doing what you're doing, and take one day at a time here with this COVID-19, and we will eventually get through this.
Oh, I hope so.
I know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. You bet. Be well.
You too.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHDrewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD reWired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.